You cannot mount that on a straw. Won't go. Okay. And he taught them. He taught them to Moshe. We say them only in 10 people. But, well, I never saw them. But you can experience them sometimes. But since it's so abstract, so the Alter Rebbe came. The Alter Rebbe was like the spiritual grandson of the Baal Shem Tov. And he portrayed this concept with the parable of the king in the field. Usually the king is in his palace. And who can get into the king's palace? There's guards at the gate. You can't just go in. We have a new king in England. Something, a little bit, to understand what it is. But this is like it's like a doll. It's like a fake imitation of what a king really is. Kings in the time, 100, 200 or more years ago, in the time of kings had total power of life and death. If you blinked the wrong way in the presence of the king, what does it say? Alice in Wonderland, the Queen of Hearts, off with his head. It's not a joke. That's the reality. So you can't get to see the king when he's in his palace. But sometimes the king has to go out for whatever reason it is. He wants to visit his Aunt Mabel, Lady Mabel Montefiore. And he's coming back from visiting his Aunt Mabel. And now he's available. He's not in the palace. And he comes and he meets the people of his country, his citizens, and they didn't expect him. They're busy at work. They're wearing their working clothes. The farmer, the baker, the candlestick maker, the butcher, the storekeeper, the tailor. Everybody's busy doing what they do. And he takes an interest in them, and he looks into their affairs, and he asks them how they're doing. Are they married? Do they have children? How are their children doing? Is everybody well? Is there anything that you need? Anything I can do for you? Imagine the king coming and asking you, is there anything I can do for you? And the one says, yes. My roof leaks. I need someone to repair the roof. I can't afford to do it before the cold weather starts. Another one says, my wife isn't feeling well. She needs someone to help her with the housework. The king says, no problem. The king listens. He's very happy to meet with his citizens because he knows that they are loyal and he cares about them. And he's on his way back to his palace. And in a few days, he's going to get there, and then you won't be able to see him again. So that's how the Alter Rebbe explained how special these days are. The 13 attributes of Hashem's mercy are shining in the heavens. If you're the Baal Shem Tov, you can see it. And if you're the Alter Rebbe, you can help us to understand it. If the king is available, he's out in the field. That's the idea of Melech Basada, the king is in the field. That's today. Today, tomorrow. Next Wednesday is a super special day because it's the day that the holy neshama of the Baal Shem Tov came down from heaven into this world. What a blessing that was. Hashem must have known what a blessing it was. He was sending this neshama down to fix the ailments, to fix the ills of the Jewish people. And if you fix the ills of the Jewish people, you fix the ills of the whole world. The world has much changed in my time. I've seen it. Give you a couple of examples of how much the world has changed. When I was a young kid, before bar mitzvah, we had a backyard in the house where I grew up. And I would go out on a warm day and lie on the grass and look up into the sky maybe with a friend, and if we saw a jet going by, a jet fighter, we'd get very excited. Oh, that's a MiG, we would say. But when my family took a vacation and took me along, we didn't go in a jet. We went in propellered planes. Nowadays, who heard of such a thing? We went in a plane with propellers. DC-6, DC-7. What is such a thing? In terms of the internet, somebody told me recently he follows these things. He likes to see that our shir is online. He saw that the shir is back online. He's very excited, very happy about it. He said, in 1960s, Rabbi Joseph Weinberg, you can see videos of him leading the davening on Slichas before Rosh Hashanah. A very articulate person who went on many missions of the Rebbe. Very knowledgeable, very heartsick. And every Saturday night, Motzei Shabbos, he would give a shir in Tanya for half an hour. And he came to the Rebbe with a suggestion that maybe we should put this up on the radio. They used to have a radio station called WEBD, the station that speaks your language. They had shows in Yiddish and different languages. And the Rebbe said to him, the world is not ready for it. The world is not ready for it. In other words, to teach Tanya in a public forum is a big revelation of light. It's like an atomic bomb going off. To reveal the inner side of Torah. The Rebbe said, the world's not ready. Don't do it. It's going to have bad repercussions. Who knows what will happen? Maybe the Yetzer Hara will come and complain to Hashem. Look what's going on. They're revealing your secrets in public on the radio. What are people going to do about it? They're not going to care. They're not even going to listen. And make a bilbul, a complaint against the Baal Shem Tov and against Hasidus because of it. And it happened. It happened in the past. When there was a mimer, a teaching of the Maggid of Mezerich, he was the biggest follower, and he was the Rebbe after the Baal Shem Tov. He was the main Rebbe after the Baal Shem Tov. He was the Alter Rebbe's Rebbe. And one of his Maimorim was on the floor, fell on the floor. And one of his Hasidim saw this on the floor and picked it up, and he was very upset. Disrespectful. Such a holy mimer about God himself is on the floor with the garbage, with the dirt. He was very upset, didn't say anything. Didn't say anything. But he was such a tzaddik, such a righteous person, that the fact that he was upset made a commotion in heaven. And there was a complaint lodged in heaven against the Maggid of Mezerich, that he's teaching secrets of God, and the world doesn't appreciate it. It's not ready. The world's not ready for this. And look, they take the secrets of God and they leave them on the floor with the dirt. And as a result, there was a decree passed in heaven that the Maggid should be taken away from the world. He was revealing too much. And the Alter Rebbe was his foremost student, disciple, and he was so close to the Maggid. The Maggid knew about this. The Alter Rebbe sensed it, and the different Hasidim were talking, and he came up with a story. And he was the youngest of the disciples of the Maggid. And he told the following story. That there was a king who had a precious, beloved son, and the son fell ill. Does anybody here know what lockjaw is? When I was growing up, in the last of the ancient times, there was an illness called lockjaw, which you could get if you didn't have a tetanus shot before the summer. You had to have a tetanus shot to protect you from tetanus, whatever tetanus was, I don't know. But if you didn't have this shot and you had a cut on your foot or something like that, you could end up getting a disease. So you have locked jaws. You wouldn't be able to move your jaw, and so that could be fatal. It's a very serious disease. Well, that's what the prince got. The king's only beloved son got this disease, which seems to be like lockjaw. And the doctors couldn't help him. Doctors in those days didn't know about tetanus. Just like nowadays, people insist on you having a flu shot. In those days, you had to have a tetanus shot. And it looked like the prince was going to die. And nobody knew what to do. And came along a wise man and said to the king, "Your Majesty, I can help you. But it's not going to be easy for you to do what's necessary to save your son's life." He said, "What's that?" He said, "You have a crown. And your crown is very beautiful. And in the middle of your crown, there's a precious stone." You want to know what a king's crown is like? Online now, you're going to see about England, the crown jewels. You're going to make a whole big deal about it because there's a new king. I heard yesterday the queen passed away. I remember when she became queen, I was in grade 6. Yeah, when she became queen, she was 25 years old. I was in grade 6. And we did project, from the newspapers, from the magazines, the colored magazines, we cut out pictures, we did scrapbooks all about the crown jewels that are hidden away. Nobody ever sees them in the Tower of London. It'll all become public knowledge again now with the coronation of the king. Very interesting, the coronation of the king before Rosh Hashanah. The whole idea of Rosh Hashanah is the coronation of Hashem. That we are going to coronate Hashem and make him king over us and over the whole world. That's the whole idea of Rosh Hashanah. So anyway, your Majesty, you have the most beautiful crown in the whole wide world. And the most precious thing about your crown is this most extraordinary jewel. You can go online and find out all about the most precious diamonds in the world that are in the possession of the Queen of England, the King of England now. They have different names. Biggest, most beautiful diamonds. So you have this crown, this jewel in your crown, the best of your crown jewels. You want to save your son's life, you have to take that jewel and grind it up into dust. And I will make a drink, a potion out of it. And if he will drink this drink, it will cure him of the tetanus. He'll be able to function. The king said, "Do it. Take the jewel out of my crown and grind it up, give it to my son, just save his life." So they did it. But when they went to give it to the son, to the prince to drink, the disease had progressed and the son was no longer able to drink. So the wise man said to the king, "What should I do?" And the king said, "He can't drink. Take the potion that you made and sprinkle it on his lips. Maybe a drop will get in, and that will save his life." That was the story that the Alter Rebbe told to his fellow Hasidim of the Maggid of Mezrich. And when they heard that story in heaven, they said, "He's right. This is all a parable. The king is Hashem. And the prince who is dying is the Jewish people. And the wise man is the Baal Shem Tov and his disciple, Rabbi Pape, the Maggid of Mezrich. And the crown jewel is the secrets of the Torah that nobody knows. They only belong in the crown of the king, because the crown is higher even than the mind. And when he took the crown, and he would take this most precious jewel and grind it up like dust in order to save the life of the prince, and the king is ready to do that. and the king and the prince can't drink. He says, so just splash a few drops from your crown jewel. And what about the other drops? They'll fall on the floor. And the king said, do it, but save his life. And with those words, the decree was taken off, because that described the whole approach of Hasidism and the Baal Shem Tov and the Magnum Mezerich to reviving the Jewish people and saving them at this crucial time in Jewish history, when Judaism was down and out, like after the Holocaust. They had a Holocaust before then also, from the Cossacks, where they just slaughtered. They were coming back from their wars, and every village they went through, they just slaughtered every Jew in sight. Every Jew in sight. Slaughtered them. So the Jewish people were really, really down and out. And this mashal saved a life, and the Maggid was always grateful to the Alter Rebbe forever after for saving the life of his son. Okay. So this is the Alter Rebbe, and this is the Baal Shem Tov, and this is the Hasidus that they bring into the world. And this is how the Alter Rebbe brings such a high concept of the ideas of godliness down to a level where we can understand it. And so he brings down the idea of 13 attributes of God's mercy are shining in the heavens, and he brings it down to the level that we can deal with it. But we have to understand the king is right here. He's right here. Every single one of you can just sit down in your private place and tell Hashem what you need. He's waiting to hear from you. He's interested, and he wants to know what's doing with your father, your mother, your brother, your sister, your grandma, your grandpa. What are your goals and aspirations? How do you feel about Chabad? How do you feel about Torah and mitzvahs? He wants to hear from you. How do you feel about your dorm? How do you feel about your friends? How do you feel about yourself? The king is there. He wants to hear from you. So that's the idea of these days of Elul. And before the Baal Shem Tov revealed this secret, do you think Hashem didn't know he was going to do that? Was Hashem surprised? No. Hashem enabled us on the Shama that's so high and so sensitive that it would know this secret, which would be crucial to the Jewish people to know. And he sent it down to this world, and it came into the world. Next Wednesday is the anniversary. Next Wednesday, Tuesday night and Wednesday is Chai Elul. Chai is life. Which Jew doesn't wear a chai around his neck? He could perform to the ultra reformed synagogue, who pray to whom it may concern, but he'll wear a chai around his neck because he knows he's a Jew, and chai means to life, to life. What's the music? What's the song? L'chaim, to life, from the fiddler, yeah? Chai Elul is life, a day that brings life into everything we're trying to do in Elul. So if we know the king is in the field, Chai Elul is going to put extra life into our whole awareness of this idea and what we're doing about it. And if it's still too high, because it's the Baal Shem Tov's idea, so guess what? The Alter Rebbe is born on the same day. How many years later? I forget. That's 48 years later, something like that. The Alter Rebbe, the Baal Shem Tov was about 48 years old when the Alter Rebbe was born. And he knew it was happening. His Talmidim were so excited because they saw that something special is going on by the Rebbe, and they didn't know what. And in a way, the Rebbe himself, the Baal Shem Tov, also didn't know what. He just knew that something very special was happening. A very special neshama was coming into the world. He didn't know who it would be. He didn't know who were going to be the parents or where they lived. And later, he found out on Rosh Hashanah, it says on Rosh Hashanah, the Baal Shem Tov's davening was out of this world. It wasn't like anything that his students had ever heard ever before. He was so elated, so excited. His davening was so full of joy and happiness, because he knew that a new neshama was coming into the world that had never been in the world before, never, not reincarnated, didn't come with any baggage, didn't come with any sins that it had done in a previous incarnation, didn't have to come to fix up his own neshama, came to fix up the world, the Jewish people, and was born on his birthday. And that was the neshama of the Alter Rebbe. It says, you see, Adam Arishan was a new neshama. The first man was a brand new neshama. And he contained within him all the neshamas. But not all of them got revealed in human bodies at once. Sometimes the neshama remained in the world of neshamas, in the storehouse of neshamas. And that's what's called a new neshama. And this new neshama came into the world on the 18th. 18 is Chai, right? Yud Ches Chai, Chai Elul. The day the Alter Rebbe, a new neshama came into the world to establish Chabad. What's Chabad? Chabad means intellect. That with our brains, we can understand these lofty, general ideas about God that the Baal Shem Tov himself was revealing. So these are very, very special days. From Chai Elul to Rosh Hashanah, there's 12 days. 18 and 12 is 30, right? So we've got 12 days from Chai Elul to the 30th of Elul is Rosh Hashanah. This is first day of Tishrei. We've got 12 days, there's 12 months of the year. So obviously, how does it work? Each day of these 12 days corresponds to one of the months of the year that went by. So Chai Elul corresponds to last year Tishrei. So that's a time for us to think, well, what were we doing last year Tishrei? Were you in Machon Chana yet? No, not some of you yes, some of you no. And what did you do on Rosh Hashanah? Where were you on Rosh Hashanah? I can remember the first year I found Chabad. I can tell you where I was on Rosh Hashanah, but that's a different story. It's not for now. It's a different story. Maybe some other time. So we have to think about the whole month of Tishrei. Then the second day, the 19th day of Elul, is for the second month of the year, Cheshvan. We have to think about what we were doing in Cheshvan. And the third day of Elul is about Kislev, and we have to think about what did we do in the month of Kislev, Hanukkah. Did you light Hanukkah candles last year? Maybe you didn't. Maybe you did for the first time in your life. Maybe you always do. So you did this year too. Maybe you went and shared the mitzvah of Hanukkah with others on Hanukkah. You have to think into it each day, a month for the 12 months of the year, and think about how you can learn from what you did then that could have been better. So that's another concept of Chai Elul. That puts an extra life and energy into what we're trying to accomplish in Elul. Now I want to tell you a story. It's a very important story. It has to do with the Baal Shem Tov and his pupil, his disciple, Rabbi Dov Ber, the Maggid of Mezritch. And we put their names on the board. We have to know these names intimately.
Sure. You can erase it without writing over it.
I'll give you that job, okay? So the Baal Shem Tov, we learned that yesterday, that his name was Yisroel, and Yisroel stands for the fact that there are 600,000 letters in the Torah, right? We learned that. So the name Yisroel stands for the whole Jew, because every Jewish person has a letter in the Torah. Because the number of Jews who went out of Egypt, how many Jews went out of Egypt? 600,000.
Yeah.
These are the general souls, and each general soul has many offshoots, like a tree, has many branches, and the branches has many twigs. But there's 600,000 general souls. Each one has a letter in the Torah. We're connected. That's the source of our life. So that's Yisroel Baal Shem Tov. Baal Shem Tov. I had a girl in class last year called Tova.
Cute.
So what James said Tova, I said, that's a good name. She liked that. Now, the dog bear is the name of the foremost disciple of the Baal Shem Tov. He was the Rebbe after the Baal Shem Tov. And his foremost Talmud was Rabbi Shneir Zalman, who is the first Rebbe of Lubavitch. He's the Alter Rebbe, author of the Tanya, and the Shulchan Aruch. So the Tanya, okay. So his birthday and the Baal Shem Tov's birthday is the same day, the 18th of Elul, Chai Elul. Chai Elul. Got it? Now here's the story. Rabbi Dov Ber, the Maggid, had a student, and his name was a name you've never heard before. Well, you have heard. I think you have heard it because he had a student named, guess what? Menachem. You know what his second name was?
Mendel.
What?
Mendel.
Mendel, that's right. Menachem Mendel. Good guess. Wild guess. Just stabbed in the dark, right?
He is.
He had a student named Menachem Mendel with brilliance. Brilliant child. Before Bar Mitzvah. Absolutely, unbelievably brilliant. And he had one thing about him, though. He was what you would call, I hope I'll be forgiven in heaven for using this term, a dandy. What's a dandy? A person who cares so much about his physical appearance and always is, very fastidious about cleanliness and about wearing the most fashionable clothes and so on. And the Maggid was worried about this characteristic in this child, brilliant child, but why was he so much into superficial things? So he took him to the Baal Shem Tov. He was a child. He took him to the Baal Shem Tov, and they spent Shabbos by the Baal Shem Tov, and Motzi Shabbos, they had a private yichidus with the Baal Shem Tov. And after that, the Baal Shem Tov said to the Maggid, don't worry.
Rabbi Pape.
I have looked into his soul, and he's pure. He's pure. It's pure neshama. So you would have thought that he maybe would be designated to be the next Rebbe after the Maggid, but he wasn't. And this is why. Because that Yechidus, that night, Motzi Shabbos, the Alter Rebbe wanted him to be the next Rebbe. And he grew up. He was older than the Alter Rebbe. He was the oldest Talmud. I mean, he was a child at the time of the story, but he became the oldest Talmud of the Maggid. And when they were there that night, Saturday night, Motzi Shabbos, the Baal Shem Tov told a story. The child, Rabbi Menachem Mendel, heard the story. His Rebbe, who was Rabbi Dover, heard the story. There was another rabbi there called Yaakov Yosef, who became a big Rav, and he was the first one to publish the teachings of Hasidus, to write down the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov and publish them, which was revolutionary. And there was someone else there, oh, I forget, the third person there. And he told the story. And there were many incidents that happened in this whole story. And the people who were there, they understood, they were very holy people, and they understood that the story was about a boy who grew up, and these were the things that happened to him. And they understood that the story was about the boy, Menachem Mendel, about this young, brilliant young boy. And so years later, when the Maggid passed away, the Alter Rebbe wanted that this boy, Rabbi Menachem Mendel, should become the next Rebbe. And he said, no, I cannot. He said, why? He said, because I was by the Baal Shem Tov and he told me a story. And I knew then, and I know that it was the story of my life. And in that story, I have to go to Eretz Yisrael, which was in those days a very wild place. It was filled with disease and malaria and swamps and mosquitoes, and there was no economy. It was a wasteland. If you want to read about it, read Mark Twain. He writes about what Eretz Yisrael was in those days. He said, but I have to go there. And the Alter Rebbe, by the way, made Koil Chabad to send money to him and to the Hasidim that went with him to support them. And so on their way, the Alter Rebbe accompanied him, didn't want to leave him. The Alter Rebbe was totally bound up, heart and soul with him. He accompanied him to Eretz Yisrael. And when they got to where the war is going on now, to cross over what's called the Bosporus, to get from Crimea to the mainland, he and the Alter Rebbe were together for several days, and the Alter Rebbe was begging him to stay in Europe, and he's saying, no, I have to go to Eretz Yisrael, and you have to go back. And so he sent the Alter Rebbe on a shlichus back to Lithuania, which was a very hard-boiled center of opposition to the Baal Shem Tov. That's your most difficult shlichus has been given to you. That's where you're going to have to go. And on the way, they made a detour and they went through the city of Polonoi. Am I confusing you with all these names? We went through the city of Polonoi, and the rabbi in Polonoi was the same rabbi, Yaakov Yosef, who was the first one to publish the books of the Baal Shem Tov, the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov. Baal Shem Tov never wrote anything down. So he was the first one who gathered these teachings and began to publish them, to disseminate Hasidus, because they knew from this vision of the Baal Shem Tov that Moshiach is going to come when the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov will spread out where it's everywhere. And he started doing that. So they made a detour to visit him. And when he went in to visit him, so Rabbi Yaakov Yosef said to Rabbi Menachem Mendel, do you remember that Motzi Shabbos when we were by the Baal Shem Tov? He said, yes, I remember very well. He said, do you know what it was about? He said, I know what it was about. It was about my life. He said, how much did you know? He said, well, I knew up to the age that I had achieved, that he was describing things that had happened to me. And Rabbi Yaakov Yosef said, and how far have you gotten in the story? He said, I've gotten to the point where he said I was going to visit you on my way to Eretz Yisrael, and that's why I'm here. To get your blessing. And that's the story. That's the story I want to tell.
So interesting.
What?
So interesting.
I can't hear a word you're saying.
It's so interesting.
It's what?
Interesting.
Oh, thank you for speaking clearly and slowly, because the acoustics in this room are not meant for people to hear one another.
They're meant for
It's very
us to hear you.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Good. I try to talk loud, but when you girls speak, it's very hard for me to hear what you're saying because your words bounce around and generally you're shy and you talk quietly and the air conditioner is going on. I can't. But what's the point of the story? The point of the story is extraordinary. This means clearly that the Baal Shem Tov knew everything about this person's life before he had lived it. How can that be? Is that called prophecy? Or is that called insight? Or is that seeing from a higher level, like the traffic helicopters? They go up, traffic control. They go up in a helicopter. You're stuck in a traffic jam and you turn on the radio and the helicopter is going to tell you what's doing with the traffic, where to go. Or the GPS. Now that became GPS. Or waves. That there's a higher level that you see everything. So when the neshama goes up to a higher spiritual level, time becomes very different. We know time as 8 o'clock, you have to leave the dorm. 8:30, 8:25, you have to be in class to get yourself a yogurt. 8:30, the class begins. 9:15, the class is over. Then you go to the daven. Everything is linear, one thing after the other. But on a higher level, things are not linear. Just everything is there. No beginning, no end. Just everything is there. That's a higher level. So maybe the Baal Shem Tov was on that higher level. He had an aliyah of the neshama. And from that perspective, he could know everything. And that means a few other things. It means that before you were born, it was known in Shemayim that you were going to be in this classroom today. And that you were going to be the shliach and he was going to send you here and you were going to go and be happy and excited about it. And your best friend didn't come. Because that was not decreed for her and it was decreed for you. And someone like the Baal Shem Tov knows. And he knows when you will come to absorb these teachings, these holy teachings of the Torah, and when your friend will come, and what's going to make it happen, and how is it going to happen. And when you ask the Rebbe, the Baal Shem Tov, in any way that you know how to ask, what should I be doing? He's going to tell you an answer that fits with who you are, because he knows who you are. Just like the Baal Shem Tov knew that the neshama of the Alter Rebbe was coming into the world. He didn't know who it was. He didn't know when it was coming. He was pleasantly surprised when it happened on his birthday. And it happened through the parents were two of his Hasidim. And he had given them a blessing the year before, exactly on his birthday. They had come to him on his birthday, newly married couple, and asked a blessing for a child. And he gave them a blessing for a child on that day. And the child was born 12 months later on that day, Chai Elul. And everything is known before you're even born. Now, maybe I told you this story last day about Rabbi Baumgarten, how he was a bacher in yeshiva here, and he had a wedding, and he came back from the wedding in 770. The Rebbe was still there. And the Rebbe asked him, because those were the early days, you could speak to the Rebbe, you could get to him like a king in the field. There weren't that many Hasidim at that time. The Rebbe was newly arrived. And he said, did the Hasidim, was it a nice wedding? Yes. Did the Hasidim verbring after the wedding? Yes, they did. What did they talk about, said the Rebbe. And he answered them, the Bacher, his name was Menachem Mendel. He answered them, they verbringed about the idea, the question, is the Rebbe born a Rebbe or does he become a Rebbe? Does he work and devote himself to the service of Hashem to the extent that he becomes a Rebbe, or is he born a Rebbe? And the Rebbe said, well, what did you say? How would you answer that? The Rebbe asked you. He said, I said that I think the Rebbe is born a Rebbe. And the Rebbe smiled and went into his room, didn't say anything. smiled and went into his room. When the Rebbe's mother was expecting him, she received all kinds of telegrams from the Rebbe Rashab, who was the Friediger Rebbe's father, okay, like telling her what she should be doing in preparation for the birth of the child that she was carrying. So he knew something was going on, just like the Baal Shem Tov knew that something was going on, Chai Elul time. So if everything is known, why do I have to do anything? It's all going to happen anyway, right? No. Because Aleph, we don't know, and free choice is never taken away. That's one of the basic general rules of our Jewish life. Free choice is never taken away. You can be on Mount Sinai with Moses, and your free choice will not be taken away. Because if you don't have free choice, you can't choose to do good and not to do bad. You must always have free choice. So since you have free choice, you're always free to make a wrong decision, to make a mistake. You're always free to fix a mistake. So free choice is never taken away, and so that we should have the merit of a deeper relationship with Hashem, because someone who doesn't have free choice is a robot. An angel doesn't have free choice. It does what it's supposed to do. Hashem sends an angel to heal Abraham after his bris. The angel comes to heal. Sends an angel to overthrow the cities of Sodom. The angel comes and overthrows the city. Doesn't have any choice. Can't choose not to do it. But a person can always choose. Because if you make the right choice, you get a reward. If you make the wrong choice, you get a knas, a punishment. And that's one of the most fundamental basic principles of our Jewish life. Reward and punishment. Choose good and turn away from evil. So these are the days of reckoning between Chai Elul and Rosh Hashanah. We have to look back over the year and see, where did we make good choices? Let's make them stronger. And where did we make mistakes? Heaven forbid. Let's correct them. Okay? But you have to know, girls, that just like the Baal Shem Tov knew the Alter Rebbe was coming into the world, the Rebbe knew that every one of you was going to be here. Because before this yeshiva was established by the grandfathers of the Rebbe, the spiritual grandfather, the grandfather of his father-in-law, the father of his father-in-law, he went to the gravesite of the Tzemach Tzedek and of the Alter Rebbe and the Mittler Rebbe, and he prayed there. And the Maharash, Rebbe Shmuel, we'll talk about all these people during the year. We get to know them very intimately. And he, the Rebbe Shalom Dovber, he's named after the Maggid Dovber. He went to all these holy places like the Ohel of these holy Rebbeim to pray for the success of the yeshiva he was starting, in which Hasidus would be learned as part of the curriculum, which was a revolutionary idea, in order to create an army of young people who were going to bring Mashiach. They were going to be the army of David Melech HaMashiach. And he prayed for individually for every student who would be in that yeshiva, and that includes the girls in Beis Rivka, and the Machon Chana, Machon Yadus, and Sfas, and so on, Machon Alta, all the yeshivas that would be under the umbrella of Lubavitch. He prayed for the neshama of every single one of you. You are all hand-picked, pre-selected. Have a wonderful Shabbos and make the most of these great days. This is the Shabbos that blesses Chai Elul, which will be Wednesday. Chai Elul on a personal level in my life is a special day because it was the anniversary. First of all, it's the birthday of my daughter-in-law, who married my son. Second of all, it's the anniversary of my son and his wife, who was pushed off because it was Labor Day. It had to be the next day. And it's the anniversary of his younger brother and his wife. 3 days later, on the 22nd day of Elul. And of course, it's all the other things that we spoke about today. A good gebencht Jahr to all of you. I'm very happy to be your teacher this year. And we should all grow together and mention a good year, a year in which we should merit to welcome Melech, the King, Mashiach, in person, and he will take us all else in the whole world out of Golus. That's happening. Oh, I meant to tell you, I began this whole thing by telling you about how times have changed. That I used to see a jet, right? And now people are traveling by jets. Every 30 seconds, a jet liner passes over my house. And when Rabbi Weinberg wanted to teach Hasidus online, half an hour a week, the Rebbe said, the world isn't ready for it. And the following year, the Rebbe said to him, Rabbi Yosef, the world is ready for it now, 1 year. And began this shir for half an hour a week. And people used to wait to listen to hear half an hour of Tanya on the radio Saturday night. And now you have Tanya, our class, and many other classes being taught online 24/6, around the clock. So that's a big change in the world. That means the Hasidus is out there. And this is what the Mashiach said to the Baal Shem Tov. He's coming when Hasidus will be everywhere. Your teachings will be everywhere. Shabbos. Have a wonderful Shabbos. If any of these stories stay with you, you can share them with your Shabbos host. And if you want to hear them again,